Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of Authors and Books. And today we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Utpal Kumar. Utpal ji, thank you so much for being with us. Utpal ji is a senior journalist and he is currently also opinion editor of News 18 and FirstPost.com. And he has been a journalist for almost 2 decades. And today we are going to talk about his first book, which has just come out and it is making waves, and it's already bestseller. It's called Bharat Rising: Dharma, Democracy, and Diplomacy, and it has been published by Blue One Inc. Utpal ji, first, many congratulations for your first book and such a successful,
Uh,
maiden book. It generally doesn't happen with, especially in the non-fiction section. So many congratulations. And my first question to you is that what is the essence of this book? Because it's a
uh,
very diverse, dharma, democracy, and diplomacy. For normal person, it looks to be a very wide spectrum. But what are the interlinkages and what is the essence of the book?
First of all, thank you, Arun, for inviting me here. It's absolutely my honor. Uh, uh, as far as this book is concerned, I think we live in a very interesting time. It's actually, we don't realize we are so close to the event happening that we sometimes don't realize that we are actually living in a time when history being made. Where it's Ram Mandir, where it's Article 370, where it's, UCC. We're also talking about the CAA. So lots of things are happening, and so I think we're too close to the event, so that's why we don't realize the magnitude of the change happening. So this book is an attempt to do that, to chronicle, to capture some of this important, epoch-making changes happening in the current times. Also, it is an attempt to correct the narrative. There has been a narrative guided by mainstream, intelligentsia of this country. Someone may call this, Luton gangs, or whatever name you can give it, in collaboration with global intellectual think tank media, where they want to project this country, this Naya Bharat, as we call it, in a very negative light. They want to project it as something, which is where democracy is sliding. Minorities are absolutely being targeted. Press freedom is going downhill. I'm myself a journalist for the last 2 decades. I believe that press freedom has only increased in last few years instead of getting down. So my book has been an attempt to just correct that notion as well too.
If we look at, you talked about, broadly the issue of narrative. So, do you see there is a anti-India narrative? Specifically, it has been scaled up, especially since what you call the 2014. Since 2014, when Narendra Modi took over, because we every second day we see an onslaught from Western media
Absolutely.
on the India. Even now during the elections, they are saying that it's like democracy is like backsliding. So, do you see that post 2014 there is a paradigm shift in terms of
It,
this narrative?
it is only. In fact, you see it. 2014 is has been important from another point of view as well. For the first time, there was a government which was, which actually can be seen as, alternative to the Nehruvian model of governance. And there were Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, there were other non-Congress government, but they still were not out of that, the charm of Nehruvianism. This is the first government, 2014, which actually came out of this. It actually, it kind of tried to bring in, usher in a new kind of, model of governance. And that's why, you see a lot of old elites, and I call them, Lutyens elites. They completely got, angry, upset about that, because, their access to power was curbed. So they, along with the global, their global connections, whether Western think tank or Western media, even Western deep states, they all collaborated and presented a picture in a very dark color about this country. And that's why we saw that immediately after this government came, we saw things like, about Wapsi happening. church attack. I know what happened about church attack. We found out that it was there were hardly any conspiracy about targeting church. But all this became big global phenomena. Similarly, one, two incidents here, there about attack on Muslims. They were projected as if entire Muslim community is being targeted in this country. So this was happening precisely because this was a different government. The government is a different nature. For the first time, the old elites who thought that their birthright to have the access to the corridor of power, they were kind of disenfranchised. They become powerless in that way. So it was a blowback from their side, and that's why we could see it. But then this has not stopped. Still, we see when PM Modi went to United States on a state visit, uh, and that very day, mainstream newspapers like New York Times came up with editorials saying that Biden shaking hands with Modi is like democracy taking a backseat. Now that kind of narrative, when the two democracies, the oldest and the largest democracy, shaking hands, I think that was really tragic. But then that has been happening. That's happening, and there's a reason for that. Because for the first time, the world can see that that country is actually waking up to its potential, to its civilizational past. It is no longer apologetic about itself, and also it is not it's not just looking backward. It's also looking forward. So what is happening is today's new India is absolutely confident about its roots, civilization roots, but it's also very modern and very tech oriented. So that's a very very one can call a very deadly combination to have. So one can see that India is coming out of this colonial hangover, mental as well. And first two terms we saw that a lot of things happen, like Ram Mandir happened, all these things. In my book I talked about that like a physical sense of coloniality. We removed that. Mental, we are still working on that, like textbook, history textbook needs to be rewritten from India's perspective, not from the invader's perspective. Those things are still left, but we are moving in the right direction. In coming decades, we'll get through that too. So one can see that, and that's why the opposition, that kind of position, we are seeing precisely for that reason.
So you have talked about, dharma. I'll come to specifically this dharma or dharma. So it's a very, Bharat specific term. And do you how have you looked at dharma in your book in context of especially busting this narrative of Hindu majoritarianism, which has been built by both the Western media and the left illiberal media. I never call it left liberal media. It's an oxymoron, or left liberals. It's the left illiberals. So how have you looked at the concept of dharma?
See, that's really ironical, that the world, especially the mainstream Western world, and some of our own mainstream, intelligentsia, get so unsettled with dharma or something the way we talk about culture, civilization, or we start talking civilization terms, because they don't realize that India is liberal, democratic, secular, plural, whatever you can name it. It's precisely because it is Bharat. You remove Bharat from India and it will become Bangladesh or Pakistan. And look what has happened in those part of the world. So that reality, we have to understand. And that's why I deliberately kept the book Bharat Rising, not India Rising. Because I believe that the very term, that idea of India has been, manipulated in such a way, it has been presented in such a way that as if India is the creation of constitution or India is the creation of Nehruism, which is absolutely wrong. Had that been the case, I'm sure Pakistan and Bangladesh would have been equally flourishing democracies and heaven of heaven for minorities. That's not the case. It is precisely because this country has been civilizationally, culturally, has been plural. And historically we have seen Jews came, Parsis came here, everyone came, and across the world they were they were persecuted and they were they faced much of the onslaught. But in India they were not just allowed to live, but they were allowed to live on their own terms. They are allowed to follow their own traditions and cultures, and that happened even before we got the constitution, so called. So that's where people sometimes fail to understand, especially the kind of the elite intellectuals who had been ruling the roost for last 7 decades, and they somehow get unsettled with dharma. Dharma is what? Dharma is duty, doing the right thing in the right way. And in fact, you see, dharma has been the core of our existence since the Vedic times. and it's the beginning of our civilization. In fact, dharma is the one thing that which actually makes Indian society very different from the rest of the societies. And I'll give an example for that. Like Indian state has always been very strong state, unlike people whatever say. But at the same time, Indian society was equally strong, and that's something very unique phenomenon. Across the world, when you see a strong state, that means a tyrannical state which will start. The society will be weak. In India, that was not the case. India, there was a strong state, but there was equally a strong society, and this was precisely because there was something called dharma in between. Dharma was the one which moderated the power of king, and Mahabharata had that shloka which says that that the king who doesn't follow dharma is like a mad dog, and he has to be kicked away. So that's how it was. It was being pursued, and our society was also strong till the time when British came. Our society was very strong precisely because it was not dependent on state for its daily existence. The very autonomous in the way, and it was precisely because we had something called temple structure. And what happened, even when Mughals were there, Sultans were there, somehow our that village system survived because they were largely urban phenomena. They used to attack and go back to their garrisons. British, for the first time, what they did, they went to the villages for their taxes and resources and whatever they wanted to plunder. So they destroyed everything. First, they controlled the temple system, and then they also controlled the education system by doing both the things. See, temple was what? Temple was not just for for education. Temple was largely for for education. They used to run education institutions. They used to patronize art and craft. Some of the dances which survive today are precisely because of temples. They were also the patrons of international trade. The trade, whenever the merchants would go in the sea across the world, it was only the temples who had the resources and were able to provide that much of money. So all these are to help the society at large. After British, what happened that society became completely impoverished and started depending on my government, and that was the same model which Nehru uncle also started following, and our society still is like still looks up at state for anything and everything, and that's what we have been made to believe like that. The state will do everything for you. You don't have to do it. Just keep on asking. This was not. This was actually not the case with us civilizationally. So that was the problem. So, and that's why I say that now we again see the dharma coming into our discourse, whether it's through Ram Mandir, through through other Kashi Mato. These are just the example. These are more like a civilizational awakening for us. Ram Mandir movement has been more for that. We have kind of very narrowed it down to just bringing Ram Leela to a temple. It was more for the awakening of Hindu masses who were completely lost the sense of their civilizational moving. So that's why I believe that dharma has been very important, and it started coming back, and we are very less apologetic about it now.
And how do you look at, because you talked about basically dharma, democracy, and diplomacy. So how do you look at this, dharma or dharma playing out in context of Bharatiya diplomacy or Indian diplomacy, especially because I was recently reading S. Jaishankar, India's foreign minister's book, Why Bharat Matters, and in that he has interestingly drawn parallels as far as Indian diplomacy is concerned, drawn parallels, with situations and people and characters from Ramayana.
Yeah.
So, how do you see this? Because do you see a paradigm shift in terms of the Bharat's diplomacy? And second, do you see Dharma as one of the major reference points without saying it in India's new diplomacy?
Yeah, it is. It is. In fact, the kind of confidence we see, the self-belief we see in the today's generation of Indians as well as Indian leadership is precisely because it's coming from that self-assuredness about their about who they are. Like you rightly mentioned about Jaishankar's book. That book is important for that matter. That India's external affairs minister explaining India diplomacy through India's classical texts, and very rightly so. You don't find any disconnect between the two. Actually, It takes forward the story of India's diplomatic journey right now happening. So that's what I'm saying. That's something that shows about how as a nation we have confidence today. Like I remember when this book was being launched, since we talked about Dharma and diplomacy. I remember Rajiv Dograji, Rajiv Dograji was there, and he quite categorically said that he wouldn't have expected a book with a tagline Dharma and diplomacy in the same thing 20 years ago. So today is possible precisely because we as a nation are very confident about it, and this is only taking India's story forward. I'll give an example. Like for instance, I've quoted Kautilya in Pakistan chapter, and Kautilya's famous mandala story is there that that a nation's neighbor will not be a friend, but neighbor's neighbor will be a friend. Look how apt it is in India's geostrategic situation. Pakistan, look at Pakistan. We tried everything of our we somehow couldn't convince them. So they're never. Our similarly the case with China, our neighbor. But neighbors never. Russia is our friend. So sometimes we need to look back at our own tradition to maybe understand how to deal with the world, and we started doing that.
So while writing this book, my last question is that while writing this book, and as we are discussing it also, we have to, interchangeably use words like India and Bharat. And we have seen, especially if you have to take the Bharatiya narrative forward. So you need that kind of terminology because religion and dharma are not same. Rashtra
Exactly.
and nation are not same. Sanskriti and culture are not same. So how do you see this as a challenge? Because you must have faced this challenge. And what's your suggestion, for other people, other authors who are working in the same field? Personally, I feel there is a strong need for a thesaurus, which has, or a dictionary, which actually has, words which can explain only, which can only explain, which can explain the Indian in things in Indian cultural context. So how,
Uh,
but the
yeah.
challenge is also that the West is not able, the rest of the world is not able to understand it. So how do you see this, paradoxical situation?
I think we have to be slightly patient with that. We shouldn't be rushing in. Like I realize I'll deviate it, but I'll give an example with what happened with our culture, our language war we had in the 60s and 70s when you tried to push Hindi very strongly. So what happens when you do that with a lot of passion and aggression? Then there are people who will stand up and say, "But why are you doing this?" So sometimes it's better to go slow and be accommodative. I think that's the Indian way, that's the Sanatan way. To just let things unfold on its own and let people see the beauty of it. So I believe that right now anyway we are moving. See, 10 years down the line, before 2010 or so, I would hardly hear anybody talk Bharat in English, especially in English discourse. I'll hardly hear. Today, we started hearing so much. People are. I'll just give you an example of Bharat, and there are many other things. Dharma. There are so many things are coming up in our discourse and coming so naturally, so beautifully they come out. So this will happen the moment we are confident as a civilized state. हम confident हो जाएंगे तो हम automatically use करेंगे, and that's what is happening. So we shouldn't be pushing it to a point. I think it's a matter of our confidence. It's a matter of our looking back and making self inquiry about civilization, our civilization self. It's our self discovery. The moment when we do that, we will realize that that what a beautiful civilization we had, and why should we call it Bharat? There is a reason for calling Bharat. I'll give you an example for that. Bharat is the only name which we had given to ourselves. Now think about it. Your name is Arun Anand. You won't take some other's name. You are proud of your name which your father gave and which you owned up. Bharat is the name which have been given to us by ourselves. Our ancestors give that name to us. And the second thing is, even like intellectual level, Bharat comes from the Sanskrit term Bha and Rat, beholder of light and wisdom. And we talk about Bharat being Vishwaguru. And there can't be a better term for that than that. So I think we are slowly going through that path. The ideal will be, that, let this uh, uh, awakening, let the process happen. And slowly we'll reach that stage where we are there. But I think for that, I think I believe that we have to first of all, we have to correct our history and sense of history. I think that still is wrong. lot is wrong being told about us. But again, there is also a lot of improvement. Like when I was in college, Arunji, and I would not find anybody, agreeing with me on Aryan invasion migration theory. I was knowing that theory by that time. I could read books of, Sitaram Goyal and all these people. So I was aware of that, but I would not find anybody in my college who would even have an idea of it. Today, I see a lot of youngsters talking about that and being convinced that all these theories are myth. There never was an iron invasion or migration in this country. So it is happening. It's happening with a lot of, and it will happen when we are confident about ourselves as a civilized state.
So I think we'll end our conversation with this, and but I just want to sum it up because I've read the complete book. No, there are the issues on which Utpalji has written. So far, most of the content which has been produced that has been actually counter narrative. So, but we are still looking for that narrative. What is our narrative? I think Utpalji's book beautifully fills up that space where it not only gives a counter narrative, but it also tells you what is our narrative. So it's an exceptional book in that sense because generally the book, most of the books in this regard, so they give you the counter narrative that West has done this thing wrong, or the left liberals have interpreted this thing wrong. But then what is right and what is our narrative? So that this book has beautifully explained. So I think it's time now to move on from counter narrative to telling the rest of the world, that what is our narrative. And I think this book is a significant step in that direction. And thank you very much, Utpalji. And
Thank you, Anuji.
once again, many congratulations and best wishes for you. And we are expecting to have you on our show very soon with the another book of yours. And we are looking
Uh,
forward to that. And to our viewers, if you have any questions for Utpalji, please share these questions in the comment box of our YouTube video, and we'll take these questions to Utpalji and we'll try and get answers for these. If you've liked the video, please share it and like the video, and please also subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back soon with another episode of Authors and Books with another author and another book. And thank you very much, Utpalji, once again.
thank you, Anuji. Thank you very much.